Welcome to Cuba to You. This channel exists to bridge the gap between Cuban Americans and their heritage, as well as introduce non-Cubans to Cuban culture. We got some unfortunate conversation topics today. I really want to talk about the recent arrest and show trial of Jose Daniel Ferrer, who is a Cuban opposition leader of the probably the biggest opposition movement in Cuba. This is a man who has been doing opposition work for decades, really. Somebody who has been actively fighting against political oppression from the government in Cuba. This is somebody who has suffered greatly. This is someone who has dedicated his entire life to activism. Somebody who has never committed a violent crime, somebody who has never committed really any crime. This is just somebody who is an activist and who wants a better future for his island. There's something going on in Cuba right now, ladies and gentlemen, that is utterly shameful. Something going on right now that needs to be discussed. Because anywhere else in the world, and definitely if it was happening here, there would be a national discussion about what's happening. There's somebody in Cuba right now who is being threatened with a jail sentence of 9 years, whose entire character is being slandered against in the media by the Cuban government, and whose family is being threatened, and whose friends are being threatened for being in any way supportive of this man. I want to break down the timeline of events regarding Jose Daniel Ferrer's arrest, their reasoning, and everything that's happened since then, just so you understand how asinine this is. October 1st, 2019, Jose Daniel Ferrer is arrested. He is accused of assault and kidnapping. Okay? There's no evidence for said assault. In fact, one of the people who accuses him of assault made the Facebook profile where he put up his accusation video. He made it 8 days after Ferrer was arrested. So in other words, we have a testimony of assault coming after somebody gets arrested. Imagine going to jail for stealing something, and the person they say you stole from tells people after you're arrested that you stole from them. Isn't one supposed to come before the other? Jose Daniel Ferrer denounces from prison to his family and to members of his organization that he is being tortured, that he is being denied food, that he is being denied water, that he is suffering loss of weight, that he is losing teeth. He is telling them that he is essentially being tortured. He's essentially being physically and mentally tortured in prison. This obviously alarms everyone, though it doesn't surprise anyone. But I continue. After over 4 months, might have been over 5 months, Cuba finally announces a trial date. Remember, Jose Daniel Ferrer is being arrested for what they say is assault. Slapping someone. 4 or 5 months before he gets a trial date. He didn't kill anyone. He didn't rape anyone. He didn't steal anything. Okay, this isn't a serious crime. This is, even if he did do these things, you're talking about a slap on the wrist anywhere else in the world. Slapping someone in the face. They wait multiple months before he even gets a trial date. Okay. They finally announce his date. Not even a few weeks ago. Might have been last week. The government is seeking 9 years. They want him to be in jail for 9 years for slapping someone. Now, let's be clear. He's not guilty of doing that. He didn't slap anyone. All the testimonies are fraudulent. Either they came up afterward or they used testimony from 5 or 6 years ago of people saying the same thing. What they arrested him for was made up. The reason Jose Daniel Ferrer is in prison right now is because he is an activist and he is the strongest voice of opposition in Cuba right now. In the early 2000s, it was Oswaldo Paya, and they killed him. Okay? This is normal for the Cuban government. Ferrer has not been able to obtain any legal support. His family had no idea about his trial date until they found out from third-party sources, from bloggers and people telling them about it. His family's not been involved. His organization has not been allowed to be involved at all to present their case. They've been completely shut out. The government is using its own lawyers to execute its own sentencing, which they've already determined. Recently, a few months ago, the Cuban press, on their nightly news, released a video about Jose Angel Ferrer. This video, if I'm not mistaken, about 5 to 10 minutes long, I'm not exactly sure how long it was, don't remember, explained all the reasoning why Ferrer was in prison, called him a counter-revolutionary, accused him of being financed by the U.S. government, accused him of being a violent person, posted the testimonies of those people who were claiming that he hit them and hurt them, the ones that are 5 years old and the one that came out after his arrest, posted all that on their national news. Okay? Said that the American news media, saying they were basically saying that Jose Angel Ferrer is somebody who's supported by the American media, by the American press, by the American government, and they started putting images of American news media. All of those images, nothing to do with Jose Angel Ferrer. All of those images were talking about the weather, or it was their promo, a commercial for that news station. Nothing, not one of them had anything to do with Ferrer. But they posted about 40 small little clips, like a collage, making it seem as if all American news was talking about Ferrer. Their CIA agent is in prison, so everybody's talking about it. This is what they're saying in their news. They're saying, look at all these people, how they're talking about Ferrer. So there's one lie. Second lie, they show a video of Jose Angel Ferrer, no audio, holding a gun. What looks like to be a machine gun. Okay? And in the video, they start to talk about how he is a violent person, how he has a history of violence. If you watch the original video, Jose Angel Ferrer is holding a toy gun. And the point of the video is to say, do you see how this gun fires no bullets? Do you see how this gun is a toy gun? That's because we don't need arms, we don't need violence to topple a communist dictatorship. We could do it with our ideas and peacefully. So they're using a video that says the opposite to say the opposite, as is normal for the Cuban press. They accuse him of essentially doing a variety of things that he did not do. They accuse him of having relationships with people that he doesn't have. And they're painting Jose Angel Ferrer to be a criminal who is financed by the Cuban government, who is working with anti-Castro sympathizing government organizations in the U.S. and is here to destroy their revolution. And they're putting this out on the nightly news. The whole island sees. Imagine CNN picking someone at random and just lying about them. Whoever ran that story would be fired. That's called libel. Like you can't lie about, that's called slander. You can't lie about someone and not have sources. Well, in Cuba, it's not that way, because you know who runs the press? You know who controls all of the information that leaves Cuba? The communist dictatorship. Right now ran by Miguel Díaz-Canel. Okay? Right now ran by the puppet of the Castro regime. Which brings me to my final and honestly the most disturbing aspect of this entire story. Recently, a Cuban press member, this person appears on La Mesa Redonda, Randy Alonso Falcon. This person released a Facebook post essentially saying that he accuses Ferrer of being a criminal, that he is in jail because he is a criminal, and disturbingly completes his post quoting Ernesto Che Guevara when he said, "We have shot people via firing squad, we are currently shooting people via firing squad, and we will continue to shoot people via firing squad so long it is necessary." In other words, a public figure in Cuba who works for the press, who appears on TV show in Cuba, who is a journalist according to his own Twitter account, is publicly advocating for the execution of a political activist in 2020. In 2020. We want to shoot people up against the wall in 2020. That's what he's advocating for. That's his revolution. That's what he's saying has to happen with Jose Daniel Ferrer. Why? Because Jose Daniel Ferrer is getting a little popular. Okay, because more people want to join his cause. That's why. Okay, so I don't care who you are. I don't care what your political alignments are. I don't care what you think about socialism or communism. I really don't. Honestly, you have the freedom to think what you want. But what's happening in Cuba right now with Ferrer is an utter outrage. It is pathetic. It needs to be said. Hey, it's exactly what happened with Oswaldo Paya, only with Oswaldo Paya, that was a little more secretive. They found a way to kill him. They found a way to take him out, a little more secretive. But it's just like in 2003 where they did a crackdown and put 80 people in prison for their thoughts, for their political thoughts. This has undertones of that. And I have a bad feeling about this because they're about to give 9 years to a man who's done nothing wrong. We need to realize what's happening in Cuba. There needs to be a change. This cannot continue. We are in 2020, ladies and gentlemen. We do not put people up to a wall and shoot them in the head anymore. We can't. As humankind, we can't. It's ridiculous. And so it's sad to hear what's going on right now with him. And we are watching closely to his situation to see what happens. But the last update is that they want 9 years. They want to put somebody in prison for 9 years merely for being a political activist.